Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Welcome to Commander's Horn, episode 51. A huge show today, lots of news to cover. The hotfix has been applied to smooth out power levels, but was it enough? The Pro Ladder has been released and the best players are fighting for a chance to qualify for official Gwent tournaments, like the GwentSlam, which was announced last week and attracted a lot of attention. All this and a discussion about the newest neutral cards on this episode of Commander's Horn. Welcome back to Commander's Horn, a weekly Gwent podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dane McBeard, and I am joined once again by my co-host, the Midnight Viking himself, Josh. Greyboxer, slow news week. Not much happened. Not much happened at all.
Yeah, I mean, how much can we fit into a week, I guess, is the real question here, right?
Yeah, we got Pro Ladder, we got the hotfix, and we have a licensed third-party Gwent event called GwentSlam that was announced by Life Coach, which was not without some commentary. So we have a lot to talk about, but how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good, man. I mean, I think it's been another busy week for everybody, including myself. Anybody who plays or follows Gwent has probably had their plate full with the release of the hotfix, which occurred moments after the release of the podcast we were talking about last week. A whole host of changes occurred. And then 2 days after that, of course, Ranked Ladder hit out, and it's been a mad rush to get to the top. And one person's already gotten there. 400 full games in Pro Ladder. But yeah, GwentSlam was announced. I unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to qualify for GwentSlam because the qualifiers involve playing a ton of Pro Ladder, and I haven't really been playing much Pro Ladder lately. Yeah, but anyway, it's a really exciting time. Can't wait to get into it. What have you been up to, McBeard?
Yeah, I've been playing myself. I've been enjoying the hotfix, playing mostly Northern Realms because I think Stennis has single-handedly made that faction just feels kind of like it's very, very close to how closed beta Northern Realms felt with, King of Beggars being a unit that pulled units and Priscilla being a silver card that also pulled units out of your deck. So Stennis being a card that pulls units out of your deck, it really feels like it has that old school Northern Realms feel. So I've been playing a lot of that. I mean, I was playing a lot of that last podcast too, but I don't know if I even really talked about it. One of my favorite factions, once again, back on the Northern Realms train. Played a little bit of monsters as well. Today tried Nilfgaard out, but we know spies are really good. I don't know about the other archetypes for me personally, but yeah, Nilfgaard's probably the next thing that I'm looking at. Generally, though, it's been really good. Really enjoyed everything. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. Everything you said, really. I mean, qualifiers for GwentSlam are coming up, and there's a lot to talk about with this. But before we get into that, I would just like to let you know that this episode of Commander's Horn is recorded in the Commander's Horn studio. As usual, you can find Commander's Horn on iTunes, Stitcher, other podcasting apps. Follow us on Twitter at Commander's Horn for all updates on the show, and feel free to email your feedback, questions, discussion topics, or just kind words to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com.
And this episode of Commander's Horn is brought to you by our sponsor, the Skellige Board of Tourism. Come see the beautiful misty peaks of Ardskelig, because it's boring just standing here.
Good stuff. So before we get into the news, one thing I wanted to share, a little story. It's a relevant story because, as you may or may not know, we are part of the TGI, which is the Gwenelman's Invitational League, and we've been playing it for 6 weeks now. Every week we've been matched up with one of the other represented teams from around the world. Basically, anybody who's won a tournament, creates content, or is just some sort of community member in some way, they were given team captainship. And they were basically given the opportunity to build a team and compete in this league. So 6 weeks in basically a long form Swiss format. We finished our 6th game. So the only way you can advance, if you lose more than 2 games, you're out. The Commander's Horn Commandos went into
Commandos!
Yeah, there you go. We went into this game 3-1-1, the draw coming from an unfortunate scheduling mishap on the week of the Gwent Together. So we're 3-1-1, but that tie was basically a loss because if we lost this game, we wouldn't have advanced. If we lost this week, we wouldn't have advanced. So I'm going to tell the tale to you because this isn't going to be a featured match, and by the time you'd be listening to it, those featured matches would be over anyway. But the Commanders Horn Commandos took on the very difficult Team XD Esports International, captained by Merchant with True Dawn and Petrify. Basically, 3 excellent competitive players, 2 which represent Team Complexity. And it was a hard-fought 5-game series that came down to the last card. So I'm just going to quickly tell you about this, Greyboxer, because no one's going to see this. So we brought Dagon, Francesca, Full Test, and John Calvert. And our opponents brought Henselt, Dagon, Krachon Crate, and John Calvert. We banned Henselt because Northern Realms is crazy strong. And they banned Calvert. Yeah. And they banned Calvert. So it started off me versus Petrify in a Dagon mirror. Dagon versus Dagon. Petrify edged me out, took me out. We were 0-1. Then I took on Merchant. I stuck with Dagon, but I switched some of my cards around as he played Krachon Crate Greatsword. I had a lot of movement in there, and I was able to counter. We go 1-1. I take out Merchant. A- then takes on Merchant. We're running Francesca versus Krachon Crate. We completely tech out against Greatsword. So we're moving everything around. We're destroying the Greatswords. It was really something. Merchant said it was cyberbullying, the way we were targeting him.
A poor guy. He deserves better.
He does deserve better, but we're up 2-1. Then Delta takes on Merchant, our Full Test versus his Krachon Crate as well. You can't change leaders, so we knew he was bringing Krachon Crate. But he pulled the switcheroo on us. Now he's playing Krachon Crate Axeman. We thought this might happen, so we built a deck that could at least take out the Axeman and lock Axeman, but also could fight Greatsword. But it didn't matter. Merchant still got us in the end. Now we're 2-2. It comes down to True Delta versus True Dawn, the Battle of Truth.
The moment of truth.
The moment of truth. Full Test versus John Calvert, right down to the last card. His Menno, and True Dawn got the last card. His Menno cohorn was not enough. We edged him out just by a couple of points. We take the series 3-2 and advance into the playoffs. And our game, we're recording on Monday right now. Our game is tomorrow, September 12th. So it's probably already concluded by the time you listen to this. And we're ready to go. We're already talking about deck lists, but it happened so fast.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. It's super. I remember that week trying to get the schedule going, and it was really hard to line up. If you guys don't know this, like the way the Gwenelman's Invitational works is it's like the World Cup, except that there's no field that everyone goes to. There's no complex where everyone's going to go compete. You basically schedule your own, and McBeard, we've been trying to get people in 3 to 4 different time zones, up to 12 hours apart sometimes, to try to meet up all at the same time to get matches, and it's really, really difficult. So you guys have been mega to go 4-1-1 and make the playoffs. Congratulations, man.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Merchant's team has Petrify in Australia, True Dawn, which I believe he's in my time zone here, Eastern Standard Time, and then of course Merchant is based out of Britain. And then we have A- on our side, A- based out of Britain as well, and Delta is in Germany. So that's pretty tough. This one was easy, though. Merchant just gave us a time, and we did it. I had to get up pretty early. We ended up playing at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. That wasn't even the worst one, though. When we took on Mithranor's team, we had Aya in Japan. We had, I believe it was Varanus in my time zone, and then the tough one was Mithranor being in Pacific time zone, which means that his time zone is 9 hours different from Delta's time zone. So that was the one I had to get up, and I had to play really early, like 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I can't actually remember it, but it was very, very early. So scheduling the matches have been almost as hard as playing the matches, but we did it. We got there, and we're set up and ready for the playoffs, and hopefully we do you proud, Commandos.
Yeah, guys. The prize pool, I think, since it's been all donations to create the prize pool, it's up over $1,000. That's, I mean, what a like an investment from the community. And I was gonna ask you, what's the next matchup? Who's the next team you guys are up against? Do you know that yet?
So our first matchup is against Team SGC, and I'm not 100% sure who they represent or what they represent, because a lot of these teams came from Facebook, Reddit, Discord, winners from the previous Gwenelman Opens, and the members of the Gwentelman as well. Fate to Karma has 3 teams. Different countries are represented. Italy, Finland, Poland. Idealist has 2 teams. Like, there's a lot of teams, basically.
Yeah. So you guys are up against Team Stargate Command. Is that it?
Oh, is that what it is? Is that what that stands for? I know that Zane is their captain, and I've been talking, so it's going to be a little Dane versus Zane. And we're going to do our very, very best against this team. And it is, if we are, now we're facing elimination all the time, right? So if we have to advance, and it's actually very interesting because if we advance, we'd be potentially going up against the Brazilian team, which is very strong, and the 6th faction, which is another team that has a random representation of some kind.
I was going to say, at some point, you're going to have to recognize that your team is actually quite strong. So going up against another strong team should be a nice, even matchup.
Well, we just try to prepare ourselves, honestly. We just try to prepare ourselves as best as we can, navigate the time zone. I actually think that I play Gwent very well in the early morning. I think that's just how it is. So that helps. I should probably stream earlier than I do, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the moment. But it's been going well. It's been going really well.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. If you guys haven't noticed, I've returned to streaming. And I've streamed a couple times in this past week, and had a couple of really fun nights. One night playing, I think, some Consume, and then the next night was last Friday playing some Spy and Nilfgaard, and just fumbling my way through as I learned to play a deck with no carryover and no dwarves, basically, for the first time. So thanks everybody who's been jumping in for that. McBeard, you've been doing something on your stream that I want to ask you about. What is McBeard's debearding? So
shout out to DG Thunderer. He said in Discord a couple of weeks ago, maybe. I wonder how long ago it was. He said it's somewhat unfortunate that I go by McBeard online, in that it means I always have to have a beard. And I had already started planning this at the time, but I thought it was funny because I'm like, oh yeah. So I thought it would be a fun thing if I had a little event week. I wanted to build up my subs a little bit. I wanted to just create a little bit more hype around the channel. So on Wednesday, the day you may be listening to this podcast, I am going to be having a series of duels with my subs on the on Twitch, on my stream. And if basically the subs will duel me, and if they win, they get to submit a vote on how they would like me to reconstruct my facial hair, as ridiculous as they want me to do it. They want stars, lightning bolts, stick figures, shave just half of it, whatever ridiculous thing they want me to do. So at the end of the viewer duels, I will draw one of the results out of a hat, and I will shave my beard to the artistic interpretation of those people. And I will stream a very embarrassing stream on Thursday, September 14th, with whatever is left of my beard. And then on Friday, it's all coming off, and then I had to start growing it back again. So it is McBeard's debearding. And I don't know, I thought it was a pretty funny idea. So, and now I'm stuck doing it because I made graphics for it and everything. So come on by the stream. Come on by the stream. Either you're going to see me in the process of fighting for my beard, wearing the beard that was ultimately chosen for me, or without a beard at all if you come by this week after you listen to this. So we're having a good time at McBearded, twitch.tv/McBearded.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we've got a lot to talk about on this show still. We've got to talk about the hotfix. We've got to talk about the release of the Pro Ladder. And we're going to talk a little strategy. We're going to talk about the new neutral cards. There's been 5 new neutral cards that have come out. The 3 Witchers have been transformed and have a much more powerful effect, and they've become gold. And a couple of silvers that have popped out.
We're going to hit all that stuff, and we're going to talk about GwentSlam as well right after this. All right, Greyboxer, I think the best way to tackle this mountain of news is to go chronologically. So we will start like less than 12 hours after we finished recording last podcast. I think I woke up and there it was. The hotfix was live, and we saw a lot of changes. A lot of changes were applied, more than I thought, but still a modest amount of changes, I think, because I don't think they wanted to completely reinvent anything, but they wanted to bring down the power level of some things, bring up the power level of other things, and just change the way some of the cards worked. So there's a couple of big changes that I would like to highlight. But what did you think overall about the hotfix, how it was handled, and ultimately, what was settled on?
Well, I think that we saw a huge response by CD Projekt Red to some of the complaints about the crazy Squirtle mulligan power, which is something we talked about last week on the episode. And we talked a little bit too about maybe Squirtle being the only thing holding back Northern Realms. And one of the memes that was sort of born out of this was everyone reading through the notes and looking at the okay, we got Skellige, Squirtle game fixes. Where's the Northern Realms nerfs? And there was none. Yeah. But quite a huge change to a number of cards. And yeah, I think that Squirtle was brought down in power in a number of ways. I think that they focus mostly on the mulligan changes, talking about Elven War Dancers and Vriad Officers mostly being, I think, some of the bigger changes here. Huge nerfs to the Officer, and the War Dancer going from 4 to 3 will just really help. What's the quote that they always say when they hit your board? Too fast for you, Dwan.
Yeah, way too fast. Way too fast before.
And just in general, just a couple of newer cards like Dwarven Agitator and Farseer were nerfed a little bit, just because those are pretty fun cards that I think they wanted to see how it would go. And we talked about before the Pro Ladder releasing, they'd probably tune some of the cards' power, and that's exactly what we saw. So. There's a ton of changes, guys. We'll have the link in the show notes. You guys have probably already seen it anyway, but they fixed a broken interaction, I think, with Camby, with Savage Bear. If you had Savage Bear on the board and then played Camby, Savage Bear would ping Camby and proc it, which I don't think was intended. And so, wait, hold on.
Was that actually what happened, or are you thinking?
No. That's hold on. That's what can still happen.
That can still happen. Yeah, because
yes.
Camby is made disloyal.
Yes.
The Savage Bear will proc it. And
yes. That's the new thing.
Is that the new thing right now? I actually have not even heard of this. The problem that I heard of was the fact that you could kill Camby with Blood Curdling Roar.
Yes.
And you would end up with the 11-point bear and Hemdall, but now that Camby's only disloyal, you can't do that anymore. But that sounds also kind of pretty nasty, right? You play
They're both kind of nasty, right? But I think it was the priority, right, McBeard? Like they changed it to make it so you couldn't do it, but the priority of the consume effect of the Blood Curdling Roar was that the bear would always spawn after Camby went off. So you basically got a plus 11 point Camby. And with Camby now burning all the golds down too now, with golds being damageable and destroyable. That was a crazy interaction. So I thought that was a pretty cool change.
Yeah, because basically it's just like you sacrifice 5 points. Hemdall 16 and your bear is 11. It's like, that's just the way it is. But I think... So I'm trying to understand the Savage Bear thing. Is that even good? Or is that just like you still end up with nothing on your board and your opponent has 16 points? So
yeah, it's the same. It's kind of like a surprise one, right? Where it's like they never expect the Spanish Inquisition.
They never expect the Savage Camby.
Exactly.
I mean, I like a lot of these changes. I think that the big thing, Mulligan obviously was hit a little bit, just tuning here and there, but it was, I think it was ultimately Spell Squirtle with the changes to Sage not being able to forever and ever resurrect special cards. That is a great change. That had to happen. And Stammelford's Tremors changing also changed the archetype of kind of the Spell Squirtle, which is kind of gone now. You see it here and there, but it's not dominant.
Yeah.
Basically, first of all, Sage will banish any special card that it resurrects and plays. It's still a Bronze Death Mold in a lot of cases, so be careful. It's still really, really good card. But Stammelford's Tremors was spawning an Earth Elemental whenever it killed any other unit on the board, which it always did because Elven Mercenaries are at 1 strength. But now it's spawning a Lesser Guardian, which is basically a vanilla 6 strength unit. So the power level at the time that you play it is the same, but there's no carryover anymore, and there's no worry about removing those Earth Elementals. So it's better, and I'm happy that they made that change. I thought Earth Elementals was a really strong unit to give you for that effect. And that's kind of how Squirtle shakes out, and it looks like Mulligan is still pretty good. Spell Squirtle, people still think it's okay. Like I know some people that still play it here and there. I think it actually is a great counter to Axemen, personally, but it seems like it's gone down in popularity, even though you get to play Marigold's Hailstorm twice. You'd think it'd be more popular, right?
Yeah, and it is pretty popular now. I think that we've seen sort of a rise of the movement Squirtle and the Marigold's Hailstorm, specifically due to the fact that Marigold's was not touched in this hotfix, and a lot of people thought maybe it should be.
Yeah, it has no cap. It's a capless card, and I think that all capless cards are endangered species in Gwent. They will all eventually get addressed. I do believe that. I hope that this one is not. This one in particular, though, is pretty crazy. Like Marigold's Hailstorm, in a world where there is no coral casting it, and there are giant units everywhere, and golds can be affected. This card got a lot stronger almost overnight, and I think that. I think it needs to be brought down. Like, it needs to have a cap on either how much damage it can do or the maximum targets it can hit. And I think that 5 is too generous. I think some people disagree with me, but I think 5 units is too generous. I think that if you're using Marigold's Hailstorm to win a round or the game, the 6th plus unit you hit is inconsequential. 5 units is still a ton of units. I think it should be 3, or it should be a selected number, or it should be a flat amount of points you can do. I don't know. Like, I feel like Marigold's Hailstorm before was not even better than old Manticore Venom that had a flat 20 points of damage on 5 units, like, already. Like, Marigold's is good, but it doesn't always even get you 20 points these days.
Yeah, and I think that you're bringing up a really good point here, which is part of the tale of the reactions and the response to this hotfix was what they didn't change. And what they didn't change, as we just mentioned, was Marigold's Hailstorm. And Marigold's is something that a lot of people would say, well, it's not a problem. It's always been in the game. No one really used it until now. It wasn't a problem before. It's not a problem now. Well, let me tell you something. Before, bronzes weren't on average 10 to 13 or 14 power. Now they are. So Marigold's has seen a bump in damage from probably, an average of hitting 5 strength per unit to now hitting maybe 7 or 8 strength per unit. And in a world where movement ST or movement at all is becoming more and more viable as an archetype, and you can interact and move more of your opponent's cards and row stack them for yourself, being able to apply an effect like Marigold's, which is limitless, it is rounding up, it is ignoring armor. I think that all these things have kind of created this perfect storm, if you will.
Yeah,
really
perfect hailstorm.
Perfect hailstorm. Oh, but anyway, I think that that's a combination, right? The power creep on the units, the fact that you can now harm gold cards, which you couldn't harm before. Marigolds and coral would never affect a gold card before. It'd be a dead. And so in so many ways, Marigolds has just creeped up in power at this point now where it's some are saying it's a problem. Personally, I agree with McBeard here. I think that if you had it select 3 units on a row and reduce their power by half, ignoring armor, rounding up, I think that would be a perfectly fine card. It has a, it doesn't have a cap per se because, units can be very, very, very high powered, but it's not limitless like it is now. That's just one solution, but I actually really like that one, McBeard. You just kind of threw it out there, but it's really good. And I think that would be something, it's kind of like Fiend's Effect, but times 3 without a body, without the lock. So
more Vood's effect, right? Just for people following.
Sorry, more Vood.
More Vood is the new Fiend, yeah. Everything you said is correct, but there's even more that makes Marigold's Hailstorm strong in that I think the most dominant deck of the last patch was Dagon, and Dagon did not have like big crazy rows, really. It got you in a lot of different ways. It got you with like swarmy units that crept up in power, or weather effects that just destroyed your board. Or a last minute Commander's Horn, which I guess could be something that Hailstorm would do. But generally, like, you have an opportunity to Hailstorm a board in any game in any round. Sometimes these days, it's not even about a last play. It's about just a huge swing that you can apply because there's big units everywhere and everything is affected, and everything else you said. But I think that the fact that the meta is being controlled by big swing cards that are often just giant bronze bodies. Northern Realms does this. But also the movement stuff is super important. With Drowners, the Vriad Brigades, the all the stuff that monsters can do to move things around. Harpoons as well. Like, you only need to focus everything on one row. And before, that was a monsters thing with Caranthir moving 5 units and then 3 units and now just 1 unit. and Old Water Hag, which was a lacerate. So that was like the old version of Marigold's Hailstorm, but moving things on a row and then lacerating it. But this is even stronger because lots of different factions can do it, move you around, and they can all play Hailstorm. So Hailstorm is in almost every single deck you'll see.
Yeah.
High include rates. Those set off some flags, I think, at CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, we saw it happen with Decoy a long time ago. If they think that you only have 5 silver slots in your deck because you must have this card, then it might be a problem. But moving on from that, even and staying on the same topic at the same time, a big change since the hotfixes happened was something we saw at the beginning of the open beta patch. Is in response to marigolds and preventing row stacking and trying to, put your units on separate rows so they can't get marigolds hailstorm because it is so strong. We've seen a rise in gold weathers. Many decks are running 1, if not 2 gold weathers now, and it doesn't matter what archetype you're running. You usually can make pretty solid use of it, and I've been seeing a lot of this on the ladder, as well as playing a good bit of it. And I can tell you, if you're running both gold weathers and hailstorm with just a little bit of movement, your opponent doesn't know what to do and can't really respond. And I don't know about you, McBeard, but not a lot of people have been running weather clears, and even if they do, it's still a 0-point play. So the whole marigolds itself is creating a big problem, and you can't dodge marigolds and dodge gold weather at the same time.
I think for me, I don't know where all these gold weather players are. I haven't seen a lot of them lately, as in I didn't see any today. I didn't see any on Sunday. I didn't see very many on Friday. It's like 1 out of maybe 5 or 6, sometimes even 1 in every 10 games. So it's very much like how Villain Trettenmirth used to feel back when he used to burn down 2 units at a time. And it was I hated that Villain Trettenmirth version. I didn't want to tech against it because I didn't see it often enough that my techs really felt like it was improving my win rate. But when I did see it, it was devastating if I didn't have any way to answer it. And I feel like gold weathers can feel like that because it's an immense amount of pressure in any given round. If you don't have a clear for it, you just have to deal with it. And some decks just can't do that. I think Northern Realms is built to do it because a lot of their armor effects do absorb the damage. But you said it, right? Marigold's Hailstorm works with gold weathers because when you play your gold weather, which weathers every row on the board, you are less inclined to separate your units because you don't want your opponent to get extra value from the weather ticking on all the rows. So you just stick everything on 1 row, so it's only 1 ping per turn. And then you play right into Hailstorm. So the meta is dictating that you must run clears. I feel like the decks that I'm seeing aren't forcing me to have clears enough. You'll see Dagon every now and then, so at least you'll always have a reason to clear fog or something like that. Or Aridin, at least he applies a lot of frost to you. Skellige Storm is here and there with Axemen and really any Skellige deck that runs Burn a Brand. But it's still peppered in there. There's other threats. Generally, I feel like you're okay running your silver weather clear mage. And some decks make a lot of good use out of their weather clear bronzes, like Squirtle, the movement-based card. That's really strong as well. And I think that Nilfgaard as well, if you're running the Nilfgaard Standard Bearer, is the fact that you get a soldier out of your your Nausicaa Standard Bearer. That's okay too. So I think that you don't have to make your deck that much worse to protect yourself. So you should probably consider it if you're getting pummeled by weather.
Yeah, I agree, and that's really the only way you can respond to it at this point, because it's the Clear Skies card is just 0 tempo, and your faction bronzes that clear the weather on your row are probably the best way to split the difference in order to prepare for the onslaught of gold weather that I am afraid is going to be happening. I'll tell you what, McBeard, I saw Life Coach playing double gold weathers today.
Well, it's got to be good then, right?
It's dead game. It's over.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was one huge thing that I've noticed coming out of the patch is generally these changes were very well received. A lot of people thought maybe Northern Realm should have seen some nerfs that we didn't see, and people thought we should have seen some Marigolds nerfs, and we didn't see those either. So it was sort of a tale of what we didn't see in the hotfix.
No lie, Henselt is quite strong. Radovid is very strong as well. They're both pretty strong, and the decks there's slight variations between them. Full Test has his own thing going on. I think it's pretty good. But I think Henselt and Radovid are well, they are kings, but they are the kings I think right now it's tough to beat Henselt sometimes. I find I struggle more against Henselt than Radovid, but I prefer playing as Radovid. That's just me. We didn't really discuss a lot of the Skellige changes, but Skellige just got a couple of things that just brought up the power level a little bit, little tweaks here and there. The Axeman went up. Harold got pretty good. I think we could probably talk about Harold just a little bit. But like Herbalist, Tweestark Veteran, Harpooners all got their power brought up a little bit. Harold seems to do like just a crushing amount of damage when you deploy him, though. Have you played any Harold? I know you like Skellige. Have you played any Skellige or Axeman or Harold or anything like that?
I have not touched an Axeman deck yet, and that's the only deck that I think I'd play Harold in. But yeah, he's been turned up a notch.
Yeah, it feels like he could just be a value play. Like sometimes when I play Radovid, I'm not out like you. I love locking units, and there's a lot of great units to lock. But if I have to play Radovid for 14 points, that's fine with me because that's really strong for leaders. I know all the leaders kind of went up, but he's always felt quite strong. Harold, you know, in a world where Marigold's Hailstorm is good and row stacking is prevalent, Harold's going to get you a lot of value and persistent value as well. I think the thinking is that he only works for Axemen, but I think that he would work in potentially any Skellige deck that really just wants to pressure. And I think that you don't have to run Axemen necessarily. I haven't been brave enough to build a Herald deck that isn't an Axemen deck, but I have a feeling that it's fine. He's not like old Harold where you have like this condition to meet to actually achieve all of your value. He's just going to land on a row and just start punching people in the face. It just seems good to me.
Yeah, and he has that solid sort of baseline strength too. He hits for 13 if there's enough power on the opposite row. He's only a 5, so he's Harold is the leader in he's the leader in Skellige that deals 2 random damage to units on the opposing row 4 times. So it's 8 plus the 5 on his body. And that's pretty removable. So if they really are worried about that ticking 1 damage per turn, they can remove him. So like if there's a threat to remove, it might be Harold. He might get frosted to death. I could see that happening a good bit because he's so low strength. Because he doesn't have any armor either. But I think this is something people would forget about because you don't really think, okay, if I play a unit on this row, is Harold on the opposite row on the board going to do me 1 damage? Like, I think it's something that people wouldn't notice and it could fly under the radar and be a pretty good card for Axemen. It's just that Bran and Croc are just so much more consistent, and Harold's always kind of suffered from a lack of consistency.
I think I honestly want to try Herald discard deck. Like just you play, the thing about Herald right now is it feels kind of weird. Like you got to place your Axeman first if you want to get all your value from Herald. But Herald, like you said, you know, it's 8 damage plus his 5 strength body plus the turn effect of him damaging the lowest unit on the row by 1. And that's like really good. And I think the fact that like it requires this setup and you need to save Herald for the best time, and I get why maybe it doesn't always seem great, but I think that with the Clan Drum and Warmongers being able to facilitate discards without being King Bran at all, I've been saying this since I ever saw the Clan Drum and Warmonger, that it enables discard with a non-Bran deck. I think you could probably run one of these crazy discard decks that's running Skirmishers, Veterans, and Warmongers and Raiders, and you play it as you would with King Bran, but you're not doing stuff that has like some tricky discarding with Ceres or Morkvarg or anything like that. You instead just go for big value plays and you just use Herald just to like have a crushing turn that becomes a problem for your opponent. Maybe middle of the first round, maybe it's your closer in round 3, but I think that if you take away the setup you feel Herald needs, he might actually become stronger in its flexibility. And I think I'm going to try that. I think.
Yeah, he's always been a decent value play. Even last patch, he was good value if you could get the units to line up the way you liked, and I always liked that bit about him as well. But I think I think that you can try that out and see how it goes. I think that he's probably going to get that baseline of 13 and maybe tick up for upwards of 20 before he gets removed, if he ever gets removed. So if you're playing against a deck that's not really armoring itself a whole lot, or if it's specifically not going to be able to destroy Herald, yeah, you can get over 20 value out of him, and that's way more than you're going to get out of Bran.
Yeah, he's like the strongest, like just the sheer stats wise, strongest leader in Skellige, right? So it's, I mean, you could probably do some stuff with Croc on Crate, But removal is always, I feel like removal is
Put
always
Avalok
weighted
in there,
just
you
a
know,
little stronger.
There's a lot you could do with Herald, I think, to make him great. And I think a lot of it might involve long rounds with Axemen, but it might not. And it might involve getting your deck efficiency with cards like the Warmonger that you say are now sort of enabled without, enable a discard deck without Bran. And, maybe even Avalok if you're worried about your deck not being efficient enough since you're not running Bran. So there's a lot of ways you could use it.
Yep. Absolutely. So if you haven't had a chance to log in and try the hotfix out, there are some cool changes. If you are a Skellige fan, you should be pretty happy. If you're a Scoia'tael fan, you should still be happy because the faction's still quite good. So don't worry too much about it. Really, there's something for everybody. Really, there's something for everybody. I honestly do believe that no leader is bad anymore. Like, I feel like every leader is fairly competitive. I think maybe Emir is the most nebulous of them. And like even Brewer, the dwarf deck is good. Like it seems like you could just run into anyone right now, and it up until maybe 4200, you could probably play anything you wanted to. The meta is probably in its best state, and that's a good thing because the Pro Ladder is out now. We should talk about this Pro Ladder. The Pro Ladder is the latest qualifying format for those who want to take competitive Gwent as serious as possible. You must first have qualified for the Pro Ladder in that you must have achieved a ranking of 4200 or rank 20 and above, and you have access to it. And then you have to play 400 qualifying games, 100 with 4 factions, to get your total MMR for the faction unlocked. And then you have to do everything you can to continuously raise your MMR with each individual faction to improve your placement. And we've seen a lot of people try to hit this very hard. 400 games is a lot of games, Greyboxer.
Yeah, sometimes 400 games is the amount of ranked games you can play in a season. And depending on how, prodigious you are and how prolific you are and how pro ladder you are, I guess. It's an immense amount of games. It's been out for less than a week now, McBeard, and someone's already hit 400 games. Some champion of marathoning Gwent. Do you know anything about Rivolf, the guy who's done it? He's hit 400 matches with a faction combined MMR of 4856.
I think that Rivolf is absolutely crazy, and I have notified the Belarus authorities to look out for this guy because I do not understand how he hit 400 matches that fast. I don't understand. I think somebody did the math on it, and I apologize if I'm incorrect about this, but it was something like if you have an average game length of something like between like 13, 15 minutes or something like that, maybe 10, 15 minutes. It was something like 14, 15-hour days each day, and I'm probably even lowballing it right now.
Yeah.
Like it's like the guy didn't sleep. Like placement number 2 right now, second place right now is Mago GX. He is one of the best players in the game, and he's proven that in a number of tournaments and ladder matches. I believe at the end of this season, he had 2 positions in the top 10. Him and his Smurf both got fancy shiny borders and titles. He is current, and this guy plays a lot. All right, Mago plays a lot all the time at a very high level. He has only completed 357 matches at the time of this recording, which is, when you look at the top 5, it's about 341, 345, 348, 357. All of these players play hours and hours a day, 8+ probably. I should probably ask Mago exactly how much he's played. But Rivolf hit 400 like 2 days ago. Like how? How is it possible?
It's 100 games a day, McBeard. That's how it's possible. And if you do your math, that it's 10, even if it's only 13 minutes per game, that's 24 hours a day, maybe 2 hours of sleep per day to be able to hit this. And like I said, it's been a marathon. No one's heard from him for a couple of days. So let's just say we are wishing the best for Rivolf, and we hope that you're okay and that you're not recuperating somewhere, getting, oxygen. And, we want you back in the pro ladder. Okay.
Well,
we're worried about you.
Yeah, well, we're worried about you. Here's the thing about Rivolf, though. He's going to have to come back into the pro ladder. Not taking away from his accomplishment and actually being able to, the volume of games he had to play. And, his Northern Realms, I mean, the thing about his MMR rankings for faction is that they're not. They're when you look at Mago's MMR all of his MMR is higher than Revolve. So as soon as he hits 100 Monsters games, he's almost there. At the time of this recording, he's 57 out of 100. If he achieves his projected real score right now, his MMR will be significantly higher than Revolve, and the same can be said about Adzikov, who is also a very good player. Some of his rankings are actually higher than Mago's in some of the factions. He's still working on unlocking them. It's going to come down to who plays the better Northern Realms or Monsters between them. Crokies, good job on Crokies. He's 4th place. He's getting there. Looks like he's deciding if he wants to play Nilfgaard or Scoia'tael, but he's already unlocked his Northern Realms, Skellige, and Monsters matches. And then there is Mistrza Gadek, Poland's Mistrza Gadek, and this player is also just getting there, 341. And then when you get past rank 5, it drops a lot. Now you're at like 300 matches played, 311 matches played. But there's some people we know on the list. It's really good. Simple Freddy Babes, Metronos, Impetuous Panda, of course. Super JJ's rank 13. And, you should check it out. masters.playgwent.com for all the information. The ladder rankings are right there in the menu. And we'll put a link in the show notes. It's really fun just to open it up and just take a look and see how good these players are doing, because it's really something, the amount of games they had to play and how well they have to play.
Yeah, and so you bring up a good point that when Mago and Adzikov get to their full unlocked MMR potential, they will probably be higher than Revolve, because it looks like they have achieved an extraordinarily high win rate, which is basically what we'd expect out of those guys. Adzikov actually is a Hearthstone player from what I can tell, and he's converted to Gwent, and I think he was incredible in Hearthstone. He had some kind of priest deck that I heard was quite popular. Do you know anything about him from your Hearthstone days?
Nope. I have been actually removed from Hearthstone. It's coming up on almost a full year at this point. When I started covering Gwent, I kind of just stopped playing Hearthstone. I stopped playing before I think it was like the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan was just about to hit, and I barely ever played in that particular expansion. So if he rose to relevance around that time, I wasn't paying attention. And
yeah.
Here's the thing. I believe he's good because his rankings show. I think the general idea is that if your ranking is between 1,300 and 1,400, it's pretty good. When you get all your factions unlocked, you're going to be definitely in the top 10, I think. But when you look at Mago's Northern Realms ranking is 1,400. I do believe it is one of the highest unlocked faction MMRs that anybody has. I can't see anybody at 1,400 at any faction in the top 20 the top 20 here. It's incredibly high.
There's nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're getting at here is this is so important because the pro ladder is going to determine how many crown points you earn for the season. And McBeard, I don't think we've talked about crown points very much because they're sort of a new thing for Gwent with the pro ladder coming out. Crown points are how you qualify for the Gwent tournaments, these officially licensed Gwent tournaments. And the way they're going to be distributed is based on your pro ladder position at the end of the season. So if you have achieved at least top 200 on the pro ladder, you're going to get at least 1 crown point. And it'll go up from there based on how you rank. And it's very much concentrated at the top. The first, second, and third get 80, 70, and 60 points apiece, respectively. So what do you think of the importance of crown points and, how important is it to get towards the very top versus just trying to get top 200?
Well, I think that the top rewards, the first, second, and third place specifically, well, even the 4th to 8th place, 50 points for those people too. So it goes 80, 70, 60. And then if you're 4th to 8th place, it's 50 points. And then 9th to 20th place, it starts to really separate at 45 points. And then it goes by like 10 places each time and it decreases by an amount. But those top placements that's a lot of points. You will be head and shoulders above almost everybody else. I think that Life Coach himself, who won the Challenger, retroactively only received 50 points. I'm just double checking.
No, you're correct. It is 50.
Yeah?
And so since he only has 50, if he were to get 50 first this season, the person who got first this season would have a place in the next Gwent tournament ahead of him, provided he didn't actually win the last Gwent Challenger.
Yeah.
because he gets an automatic invite.
Yeah, exactly. Because he did, he is going to the Gwent Challenger in December, which we're all looking forward to. But there's still a bunch of stuff that's going to happen before that. But the points you get on the ladder, I think a lot of people want online qualifiers. They want online tournaments. They want to have a chance to make it as a Gwent pro from home. They want to be able to do it online. They don't want to travel around. They don't want to sit in their chairs on the weekend playing 8 hours plus of tournaments every weekend to have a chance. Instead, it looks like they wanted to put the bulk of crown points on performance on the ladder. You can get it. You can get to those games when you want to. You still have to play an incredibly high volume of games, and this is not for the faint of heart. The amount of games you have to play and the performance that you have to provide is the best, which is, of course, you have to be the best to get into these tournaments. But on top of that, it's your highest achieved MMRs. So you can get a very, very high ranking, and you can continue trying to improve your ranking, and you don't risk losing your placement by doing that. You are always seeking to improve. So you are basically always building a new floor underneath yourself. You do lose your ranking, but as far as the leaderboard is concerned, your highest achieved ranking remains. So that's really important for basically reducing the stress of playing when you're already high ranked. There's no reason to not always be trying to improve your ranking. So you really are going to get the best of the best. I really do believe the cream will rise to the top here, and we're going to see the very best players participating in Gwent Opens and Gwent Challengers for months to come. But on top of the pro ladder that determines the bulk of these points, there are going to be other tournaments that are going to be set up, not just Gwent Opens, but also third-party licensed tournaments that I believe have a minimum of a $10,000 prize pool. And one of those was announced just this last week. Life Coach himself is holding another event. He just held one, and he's holding another one now in Vienna. And there's a lot to talk about this particular tournament. So we're going to try to hit this one chronologically as well. But this is GwentSlam. Greyboxer, were you excited when you heard about GwentSlam?
Yeah, man. I mean, I saw the Gwent together, and I saw the casting team and the competition, and it was really fun, and it was really intense competition. So I thought it was a really nice tournament that was put on by Life Coach at his, shall we say, villa in Austria, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was super great. And it turns out that was the precursor to an actual CD Projekt Red sanctioned event. Life Coach has announced the GwentSlam, which is a CD Projekt Red sanctioned event, means you can earn crown points. And there's going to be 8 players in this tournament, and they are determined based on a number of different factors. He picked a few folks from the community who have contributed a lot, like Swim. He picked he picked Game King, who performed very well at the Gwent Together, and there's going to be some open qualifiers, but this was really exciting to me. I don't know, it seemed like some folks were upset about the way the invites and the crown points were handled.
Maybe upset, to put it lightly. I would say that there was nothing short of outrage about some of the elements to GwentSlam. And I mean, so basically what started off was the announcement of the tournament. Everybody very happy. I don't think I talked to anybody that didn't like Gwent Together. And like you said, Gwent Together was the precursor. It was almost like it was an audition. Like, here's what we can do. This is the kind of quality we can bring to a third-party tournament. Really awesome stuff, and it was a pleasure to be a part of that. And then GwentSlam was announced, and it's like it's going to be a sanctioned tournament. There is a prize pool that's provided by CD Projekt Red, and it's going to be for crown points. And a couple of people raised their hands like, wait a minute. How come you're giving crown points to invited people? They don't qualify. And I honestly do believe still, even though I've had a lot of misgivings about the entire journey that this went on, that concern at a very base level is legitimate. You are inviting people to a tournament and you're getting crown points on a basic level, basic principle level.
That right there, you have distilled the core argument and all of its component parts that probably never should have been put onto the internet, but were, into the crux, right? It's that people who were hand invited could earn crown points, which, as we just talked about, people are going to have to spend 23 hours a day grinding the pro ladder to try to earn these crown points, So it's very important. These are critical crown points in order to be invited to Gwent tournaments. So, I can see that's definitely an issue.
So as the details came to light more and more, and a lot of details came to light because I think that this was dragged out and put in lights. It was, there was just...
He dragged someone out into the street and put him in the what's the stocks, right?
Oh yeah, put him in the the stocks. Kind of like that.
The nicest guy who plays Gwent got dragged into the streets and into the stocks over this.
Yeah, I mean it's like, okay, so we talked about how on a core level that the claim was legitimate, but when you talk about, there's a couple things, and there's a way you can approach it. First of all, the amount of crown points that would have been given in this tournament would have been comparatively minor compared to the bulk of the points that would be given out in the ladder. But that argument doesn't really hold water with a lot of people because it's not really about the amount of points. It's the fact that there are points being granted at all. And I hear you. I really do. And I think that I think honestly, no one had a problem with any single thing. No one cared about the invites. No one cared about who was going to be there, how it was going to be presented, what was going to happen. It all came down to crown points being offered to people that didn't actually go through a rigorous qualifying process of some kind. But it was an interesting discussion that I had with some people on my stream where when we found out that Shaggy was one of the people that was invited, no one seemed to have a problem with him being there and earning crown points because he went through the Gwent Open and qualified there. But he didn't go through any sort of qualifier to be part of this. He was invited because he was the Gwent Open winner. So it started to become a little bit nebulous as to what qualified as someone who deserved to be there and who didn't deserve to be there. And it went on for a couple days. And here's the thing. Rafal and Life Coach are two of the nicest people I've ever met. They have been so kind to me and have given me a lot of great opportunities. And I was very close to this. So it was hard for me to really talk super openly about it because I wanted to like really approach it from as an objective point of view as possible. But I think that the way when fingers started pointing, things got a little accusatory, people got vilified, Reddit got a little incited. And I think that it started to become very uncomfortable and unpleasant for me to read because I honestly do want everybody to get along. As hippie as that sounds, it is true.
We expect that of you.
You expect that. Here's the thing. This has a happy ending, right? We got news today on Monday here, Monday, September 11th. We got good news today in that Rafal addressed the community and said, we hear you. We hear the concerns. We understand that, we want everything to be fair. Rafal and the entire esports production team, they only want the very best for competitive Gwent. They don't want anything looking like people are getting a free ride. They want to make sure that the best players are playing the best players and that the effort put into being the best is exactly what you get out of it. And they have changed, and they're going to be changing the legality, the rules of future events that invited players can't earn crown points.
Yeah, and in the future, any of these licensed events that would award crown points, the number of players invited cannot exceed 25% of the tournament's total number of participants. So if there's 8 participants in the tournament, only 2 can be from actual invites. And I think that this means hand invites, McBeard, because I think it means like, almost like you're a good community member, come, be invited to this sanctioned tournament. Because the rules do allow a person to be invited based on their previous performance in sanctioned events. So whoever wins this tournament, because it's sanctioned, they could be invited to another event. They'll earn crown points for winning this one unless they were invited. But when they get invited to the next event, even though they're invited, I believe they will still earn crown points because of they meet the qualifying characteristic of winning a prior event. I think that's the only sort of nebulous thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they solved the issue, I think, almost in one fell swoop, McBeard. I think it was a very well-received criticism, even if the criticism wasn't well, put. but looks like they were in contact already with legal and were like, hey, we're going to change some of these qualifying rules. Then, this is why attorneys exist, McBeard, so we can fix these kind of problems. And it looks like they took it very seriously. And I don't know about you, McBeard, but I've been very present on the Discord, and I've seen a lot of positive feedback on this. And in fact, anyone who seems to have had an issue before was kind of like, well, we're good now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the feedback ranged from fair to completely unfair. I think some people were extremely hard on Life Coach and CD Projekt Red in some situations.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like these are my concerns. I'm giving you my concerns. And it's almost like every minute that passed after those concerns were aired was like a lifetime, because it's like every day it got hotter and hotter. And, it's going over the weekend. First thing on Monday, this was addressed by CD Projekt Red, by the way. So I think that some of the most vocal people on Reddit, I saw some names, some of the people that were speaking out to it. I know Petrify had a lot of passionate opinions about this. I saw his comment on Reddit. His comment was, "Thanks, guys. You guys are the best." I think that carries a lot of weight, because it seems like Petrify has a real eye for, he wants to be the best. And he said this. I've seen this. He wants to be the best. He wants to make sure that being the best means that you can play at the highest level against the best players. He didn't want to see any unfairness, whether it was perceived by him. Quantity of points didn't seem to matter. It seemed to be very principle based with him. He was very frustrated because he's a player who puts a lot of time into the game to be the best. And, for him to immediately respond with, "This is great," especially when you compare it to some of the things he said before, that actually made me relieved to read that. So I think that's, if he's satisfied, a lot of other people that were on his side should be satisfied. I didn't really see a negative thing at all about it. I think that the only thing that I saw that made me see red are the people that said, "Oh, hey, great, I'm glad you addressed this. Now, can you fix this thing?" Like, give them a break, guys. Just give them a break.
There is no break. You're expected to work round the clock, apparently, to please the people of Gwent. But no, I think this was the appropriate response, and it was a measured response that actually, without focusing on any of the drama or on any of the criticisms that were too sharp or anybody being insulting or insulted, they looked right at the core issue that you identified at the beginning of this discussion, McBeard, that invited people got crown points. And they had no reason to qualify, and how was that fair? That single issue is what this whole thing turned on, and that was what they zeroed in on and fixed. So that's very well done to them, and the A- is going to laugh, but we'll call it a storm in a teacup.
Storm in a teacup. Discord joke. I think that, and Rafal did point out one thing, that it was unfortunate that because this is an event that Life Coach was hosting, and that, This there was a lot of planning that went into this. He wanted to make sure that he was complying with the rules and building a tournament that people wanted to watch and be a part of and get excited about. He was really just following the rules. So Rafal said he apologized publicly to Life Coach in the response, saying that it was really just, he's taking responsibility for it, and it's unfortunate that a lot of fingers were pointed and at Life Coach. But for me, the bottom line was there was never any sort of malicious agenda. So there really was no reason to get that angry. I think everybody was just trying to do the best job that they could to create an event that people would be excited about, that would be rewarding for those who participated. And maybe this one little aspect was overlooked, and really kind of, like I said, it was dragged out, and it was put on stage, and I'm glad it's over. I mean, knock on wood, I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad that people seem to be, once again being reminded that CD Projekt Red is listening, and they just want the best for this game. The end. I mean, are we happy with this resolution?
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, I think they hit the key points, and they fixed the actual issues and ignored the detritus and let it fall where it may, because an elephant don't need a beef with no ants. some of the work that CD Projekt Red's been doing on the balance side is developing a few new neutral cards for the game, and the names might not be new to you if you know Vesemir, Lambert, and Eskel from the silver summon all Witchers from your deck kind of days, but they've been changed to gold now, and they have all kinds of different effects. Dorgary has been added to the game. As a fan of the Witcher book series, I love Dorgary. You're real animal lover, monster lover, I guess, in this game. And they've also added artifact compression, which really tied Yennefer up in the books as well. So let's talk about those cards.
Yeah, let's hit these neutral cards. We're going to start our faction tour, I think, within the next couple of episodes to talk about all the new cards in the game and where these factions are lying. And but I think it's good to start now with the neutral cards. There's only a few cards to talk about, and it's not really talking about each faction. So yeah, let's get into that in our strategy section right now.
Maybe not today and not tomorrow, but someday someone will find a way to take you down.
All right, so it's going to be a quick strategy section because we do want to talk about, the factions in future episodes, and we're lining up some guests right now. Hopefully we have some great discussions coming up, faction-based stuff, deeper stuff, but let's talk about these neutrals. So the Witchers were reworked. They were all given what a lot of people believe are fair representation of gold characters. Vesemir is such a key character in Witcher 3, and Lambert and Eskel, are there in Witcher 1 as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, they are. They're actually pretty important in that game as well.
Okay. So they're absent. They're completely absent in Witcher 2, but they come back in Witcher 3, and I think a lot of people were glad to see them. And a lot of people thought, the muster units, and we got a letter. We got some emails about it as well saying, it's just not really, it's not how I see Lambert, Eskel, and Vesemir. They need to be more powerful cards. So they got new identities, and I think that these identities are really cool. They're all very powerful cards, and they all do unique things. So let's start with Vesemir. So Vesemir was one of the first cards that we heard about with the new patch coming and the new cards. 6 strength unit, play a bronze or silver alchemy card from your deck. And now we know that full spectrum of what an alchemy card is.
Yes. And so this is sort of, this is the first card that we saw that was revealed. Okay, what's really going to be alchemy? Is alchemy going to be something that's only a Witcher thing? Is there going to be Witcher synergy with alchemy? It's not really the case, but Vesemir will actually summon a bronze or silver alchemy card from your deck, and Vesemir at 6 power is pretty decent strength if you're combining him with something like Thunderbolt Potion, which hits 3 units for 3 apiece plus 3 armor, same as the old Blizzard. So the old Vesemir can summon the old Blizzard, aka the Thunderbolt, and it's pretty good. He's a solid 15-point play there with some armor and a little bit of thinning. It's a little bit underwhelming, McBeard. Maybe that's because we've seen so much creep and power from other cards. But when this guy was first revealed, Vesemir looked great. I don't know. Have you had a chance to use him yet?
I used him a little bit in a Northern Realms deck because I was just trying to find, I felt like I had a flex gold spot in the deck that I was running. I think he's okay with Thunderbolt Potion. I think that a lot of people saw that as maybe one of the best uses for him, but you can do other stuff. I think that some of the stuff that's being kind of flying under the radar, Dimeridium Bomb is an alchemy card, and that means that basically Vesemir is Dimeridium Bomb on a stick. And there are some decks that really do function off of boosted power and some that just don't. Like Skellige is one that just doesn't really. So that would be not very good in the Skellige matchup. But, there's also Dimeridium Shackles. There's Swallow Potion, which is maybe one of the worst bronze cards in the game at the moment.
Now.
I don't think Swallow Potion got the love it needed to get in when all these bronzes got boosted up in power and changed. Like Thunderbolt Potion has a lot of application in reestablishing armor, and 9 points is average, if not on the low side, but you still see a lot of Thunderbolt Potions in the meta right now. But Swallow Potion is 8 right now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's still 8. Yep.
8 points boosted. It seems just super underwhelming. So just kind of in a roundabout way, we're talking about Vesemir, we're talking about the alchemy cards. Basically, Swallow Potion is probably, I would not be surprised if that was one of the most underplayed cards in the game, especially now that Resilience has changed. You can't carry over boosted strength. You get punished for boosting things up, as like the highest unit tends to get punished every now and then with Igni and Scorch, and big units are punished by Hailstorm. So I don't know. The play rates on Swallow Potion must be incredibly low right now.
Yeah, they'll probably be looking into that. There's I think the last one's Full Moon Potion, which is the friendly Stammelfords, like the old +2, I think, to 6 units on your own side. Random units get boosted, so potentially 12 value. So you could hit upwards of 18 with Vesemir if you've got a big enough board.
Yeah, so there's there's a fair amount of things you can do with Vesemir. You can really tailor his effect, basically. It's like whatever effect you want him to have, you can give that effect to him. If you're running Northern Realms, then you have the option of maybe running Sheila, so you can basically thin with Vesemir and with Sheila. And, the thinning of the deck is not nothing. You can put one single card you plan on having him use, like Dimeritium Bomb, or you can put a few, so you can kind of tailor it however way you want. I think that he's okay. I don't know if there's a killer application for him, like a deck that just needs Vesemir to execute its win condition yet. I don't know if it's out there yet. I think the meta might define something where Dimeritium Bomb might be super strong, and it's great to have that kind of on a stick with Vesemir. But he seems like he's fine. Like, I don't know if I would change him. I don't know if he needs any love. I don't know if it's the alchemy cards that are missing in power. I think he's totally fair as a gold card. I just think that he's kind of okay, He's just okay.
Yeah, he's okay. Like we said, he's got an upside of maybe 18 tops, probably 22 with Roach, because Roach will get hit with that potion as well. But yeah, I think that we can talk about Lambert now. Lambert, 7 gold strength, which used to mean something and now just means that's his strength. He can damage. This is a really cool effect, McBeard, because this is one of those things we talk about, almost unlimited strength here. He's he's damaging an enemy by 5, and then hits any other copies of that enemy by 4, up to 4 of them. So, bringing out my calculator here, I'm seeing that he can do 28 total damage if you have a perfect storm. I don't know about you, but this is pretty good against Consume with all the Ericus out there. Otherwise, it's not really super high powered, but it's not going to whiff very often, will it?
I know the way I look at. So I was playing with Lambert today, actually, in kind of a weirdo Nilfgaard deck that involves Magna Division, where your opponent could actually end up with multiple copies of a card. So Lambert can actually reach his full potential if your opponent ends up with like a bunch of different copies of. In the deck I was playing, that card that you want your opponent to draw is the Lesser Guardian from the Guardian. So you'd have like a bunch of 6 strength units on your opponent's side, and you just Lambert it. That's kind of like the idea of it. But yeah, you can get value in any situation where your opponent has played 3 of a specific kind of card. It hits muster units very well in that regard. And if there's 2 units on the board that are at least 5, Lambert comes down at 16 value, 7 from him, and then 9 from his effect. And that's probably okay. You're probably happy with that. 16-point play is, fair. It's, it's about where golds are these days, I think, like where you'd be okay with them functioning at, much like how Vesemir is about 15 with a Thunderbolt Potion, Lambert's about 16 with 2 units on the board, and it's probably like in an unmanufactured, uninfluenced board, you're probably going to be able to get that regularly. So it's fine, right? It's fine. I think that there's probably more application for Lambert than I think, because I don't just put him in a deck because he's a card I like or a card that I have a lot of experience with. Full disclosure, I crafted him today, so I haven't really played very much with him. So I think that having a card that can do what he does, you can like destroy Blue Mountain Commandos. Like you said, the Ericus are great. The Ericus are great choices to kill. There are Blue Stripes Commandos as well, or Blue Stripes Scouts. You'll see these cards from time to time, and I think Lambert is the best when he can kill everything he hits, but sometimes you just play him for value, I guess. And I don't know if the meta really dictates Lambert being anything more than a preference or maybe just a flexible spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably similar to Vesemir at this point. You can sort of insert him and it works. It's good value. It's a high value gold card. What do you think about Eskel? Moving on to him, 7 strength gold card. He can destroy a bronze or silver unit that's not boosted. And so it has to be at base strength or wounded for him to get his effect, but he does have the upside of destroying something. And I like this, McBeard. I like talking about the upside of these cards because there is a perfect storm in which Vesemir and Lambert can hit really high value into the 20s, or almost 20 for Vesemir and into the 20s for Lambert and Eskel. However, it can whiff, right? Because, if you don't have any cards that aren't boosted on the board, you don't have any targets for Eskel, and sometimes that can be a pretty significant problem with him. I don't know if you've played him very much, but I feel like out of the three, he's the one that's most likely to whiff.
That's actually, I think I have the other side of that argument, where I think that, first of all, I want to say hats off to CD Projekt Red in making all three of these Witcher cards feel powerful in their own way. None of them feel overpowered, but they're all like, they all feel like they're the same power level. But the thing about Eskel is, first of all, I've seen a lot more Eskel, and I think that he's probably the strongest one, because think about it like this, like in the last patch, or maybe even the patch before, like around Gwent Open, right? Think about Skellige. Skellige would often play Madman Lugos to eliminate a threat on the opposing side of the board and build a lot of tempo that way. You place Madman Lugos down, you launch whatever into the War Longship on the other side, or the Mangonel, or whatever is going to be bothering you. You destroy it, and now you're ahead by a significant amount of points, and your opponent has set up nothing. Eskel can do that to any card. He can also do that to spies. He can also hit... if he hits a large unit, he can get similar value from Lambert and Vesemir, where Eskel gets most of his value, though, is the fact that he's removing a target. So if you play Eskel into a 9 strength based unit, you're getting the same effect as Lambert hitting 2 units, like value-wise, sheer stats. So you're going to get your 16 points. But Eskel can go higher than that, with blood-curdling roar bears, or, like I said, all the spies. He's a lot like Menno Cohorn in that way, in that he can actually just go ahead and just kill a spy straight up. And I think that that's really good for a neutral card. I think that's actually fantastic. And I've been seeing a lot more Eskel, and Eskel has been, I've been on the receiving end of Eskel, nailing, he hits a unit that maybe I thought was safe. I'm like, I forget that's a card. Oh yeah, anything that's a white number is prey for Eskel. And I think that he is, of the three Witchers, probably the strongest, definitely the most prevalent, but possibly the strongest.
Yeah, like he is basically as big of a base strength unit that you can hit. Have you had? There's really no way to really judge his upside, because what's the largest bronze units you can get with base strength? They're going to be in Skellige, right? Like he's going to be huge against Skellige greatsword decks. He's probably really great against anyone who's using skirmishers and maybe a discard deck, and those kind of cards can really be the upside for Eskel. And maybe I'm wrong about that. He's not going to whiff, because there are a lot of smaller cards at least that have their base strength not boosted, and it might be just that I'm looking for that really big play most of the time, and Eskel's Eskel sometimes is looking for the base strength unit, which sometimes isn't very big. So, you're right that these cards all feel very unique, and I think that they do Eskel a solid. Eskel, who's been around the bush lore-wise, who is basically, like, in the lore, he's Geralt's equal in power. Like, he's just not as renowned as Geralt, I don't think, I think it's because he doesn't really sleep around with sorceresses so much.
That's what his flavor text says, yeah.
You remember the what was the when you guys got drunk at Kaer Morhen? Eskel talks about sleeping with a succubus.
Oh, he did?
He did.
So his hands aren't clean then. His hands aren't totally clean.
But things that maybe Geralt wouldn't stoop to doing, Eskel has done. But he's he's in his own right. He's strong, and he's probably stronger than Geralt and Gwent by now at this point, huh?
Yeah, Vanilla Geralt, good old Vanilla Geralt, Swordmaster, however you want to remember him or call him, is a 13 strength gold card. Period. That's all he does. He is just 13 strength Geralt. You need to have cards like that in Gwent, I think, for a basic level, especially if it has a gold card, a starter card that you're going to give everybody. And you want that starter card to be Geralt, because how do you play a Witcher game and not have Geralt in your control, right? That's the whole thing. And Geralt Igni and Geralt Ard are very strong cards. In fact, I think Geralt Ard is like sleeper strong right now, like crazy strong. So, and Geralt Igni has been long-standing one of, the strongest / most annoying cards to not draw in the game. And I think that Geralt does have multiple forms that you can hope to achieve and ultimately use, but Geralt as a standalone card is underwhelming. I wonder if he needs to be boosted by any means. I mean, he's an unconditional 13 strength. I don't know. When you compare him to like Manticore, which is an unconditional 12 strength, it does seem weird, the gold and silver separation there. But then again, we're talking about a neutral card here and a faction card. So it's still not really a 1-to-1. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that Eskel, if you were to line up all the Witchers right now, including all of Geralt's forms, Eskel can definitely be in the consideration for a gold that you could put in your deck. Any deck, really.
Yeah. And I don't know if we can move on from the Witchers now. We can talk about Doregere, which I think is how you say it. I don't know. I haven't had pronunciation coaching. I've only spoken with Mule about this when we recorded Gwent Folktales on Villain Trettenmirth, and he pronounced it Doregere, who is a 2-strength silver neutral card. You can spawn a Savage Bear, a Wyvern, an Ekimara, or a Drowner. And most of the time, I think, McBeard, we're seeing Drowners come out of this, with the occasional Ekimara.
Well, again, this is another card that I just happened to play with today, and that weird Nilfgaard deck that I was running, the idea was that I would want to proc the Guardian's Death Wish as soon as possible, so I knew my opponent only had those 6-strength lesser Guardians on top of the deck for Magni Division to force my opponent to draw the useless cards, basically, with Magni Division. So I was using Doregere for the Ekimara because the Ekimara would kill the Guardian, then proc the Death Wish, put the cards on top of my opponent's deck right away. So there's that. The Drowner is probably, in a general term, the strongest card you can take, because if you're running any weather at all, the Drowner is 11-point play plus 2 Doregere. You don't have to be monsters to use it. It means that every faction has access to a Drowner. Well, I mean, every faction has access to all of the cards that he can spawn. The Wyvern is just kind of like a value play, and Savage Bear is Savage Bear, which is, especially in the latest patch, with the power level that's risen up on bronzes, Savage Bear is feeling less savage than ever, I think.
Yeah,
but
7 is not great.
Yeah, 7 with an ongoing effect. I mean, you will get value if you spawn him at the beginning of the round, but for Doregere, I don't really think you'd be using that right away. You usually have a plan in mind when you put a card like this into the deck, and I think that different metas and different decks will have different kind of expectations from this card. But I think for the most part, it's kind of like when we looked at him and he was spawning some different cards, but he's always kind of feel like, I said before and I'll say it again, he walks a line of mediocrity in that his potential is interesting and flexible, but ultimately you can only do so much. But I do honestly believe that the Drowner is worth considering if you're a non-monsters player. You'd put that Drowner in your deck with Doregere. I think that's probably the best thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Doregere in the lore is a friend of monsters. I mean, he's the guy who travels with Geralt on the way to slay Villain Trettenmirth, and the entire way is trying to convince everyone not to kill this dragon, because this dragon is a creature that is going to be victimized by humans, as all of these creatures, the conjunction monsters are victimized by humans. You know, they don't belong here. It's not their fault that they're here, and they're just getting put to death by humans willy-nilly, while humans, who's putting them to death? They're the apex predator here. So he's actually on the monster's side in the books, and to see him, come into Gwent and stay so true to the lore is really cool to me. I really appreciate this touch, and yeah, I think you're right. He's kind of got this strength though, McBeard, where there's a lot of choice with Doregere. Like you can decide how you want to play the round out, with whether or not you want to develop a little bit of carryover or proc a Death Wish in a faction. I mean, you play a Nilfgaard Death Wish, McBeard. You're asking for games to go the wrong way. But to have maybe arguably one of the strongest bronzes in the current patch available as a Drowner, I think that's really great. And his upside is the same upside that the Drowners have, +2.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we may actually see, because we've seen Monster Nest retroactively add cards. Like Monster Nest, as you know, spawns a Necrophage or an Insectoid unit. So since they added a Necrophage in Rotfiend, Monster Nest now spawns Rotfiend. So who's to say in a future batch of cards that there isn't like Broccolon Panther or something like that, like some Scoia'tael animal that Doregere kind of adds to his bestiary, and he evolves as the game evolves as well. Who's to say that they don't kind of rotate the stuff that he can do? Like maybe like in different seasons, he can spawn different animals or different monsters. I think that that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, but you want cards to kind of stay similar so people aren't too shaken up. And Gwent is known for changing cards and shaking things up. So you could take either side on that. But I think he's a cool card. I think that he's fairly flexible. I think the Drowner's strong, and Ekamara carryover is potentially good. And I don't know. I think he's a good card to be in the game. I wouldn't change him. I don't think he needs anything. I think that he's just good, right? He's just a good card.
Yeah. And the final neutral that was added, the silver Artifact Compression, transforms. It's a special that transforms a bronze/silver into a jade figurine. And a jade figurine is a token, a 2-strength unit with no effect, obviously.
So this is pretty cool. So fans of The Witcher 2 know that, no spoilers. I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but there is a character that is compressed into an artifact. And that character goes through a very, very painful process. Apparently, when you come out of the artifact compression, it's more painful than going into it. So it's and it's actually in The Witcher 2, actually the figurine is red, not green. But basically it's fans of Hearthstone will recognize this as somewhat of a polymorph type card or a hex type card, in that it takes a unit, it removes it from the game entirely. It doesn't kill it, doesn't send it to the graveyard. It changes it, banishes it, and replaces it with not a useless token, but a token of very, very low value. So two, yeah, exactly. Very low value, which is 2, which is a small number. So it's very much, I just think, okay, so tell me what you think about this. I feel like it's close to being a targeted Scorch, is it not?
No, it definitely is.
Yeah.
The only thing is it only does target bronze or silver, so you still have that sort of gold immunity from artifact compression. Mm-hmm. So you can't have like a silver be a hard counter to something like Yen Conjurer, for example.
That's good.
So I like that. I like that balance. Because the card would be very, very powerful if it could affect golds. And I think it's good. I think they added this to Coral, by the way. The artifact compression is the spell that Coral does now, and Skellige, she's a 5-strength gold card that I don't know if she has the effect of spawning artifact compression, or if she just or if it says the same words as artifact compression. I don't remember the exact words on Coral right now. But
if you right click her, it shows. If you right click her, it shows the spell. Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows the spell artifact compression, which is what she casts, and so it's a little bit more lore friendly as well. Anybody who's read the books knows that a major character goes through artifact compression, and it is very painful to come out of. It also, is it a targeted Scorch is the question, McBeard. And the answer is sort of, right? But it's only as much of a targeted Scorch as maybe Marjoram is, right? Except that Marjoram has this baseline of only resetting. So something with a high base value doesn't really get affected by Marjoram. And artifact compression, on the other hand, doesn't matter what the strength is. If it's bronze or silver, it's getting turned down to 2 strength. And I don't know. I think this is a really good card. Being a neutral, you can fit it in a number of decks. But I think the most efficient way to play it is to play it with Coral and Skellige.
So I remember back in the day we were talking about the Nilfgaard card Assassination, which went through a couple of different permutations, but ultimately just ended up being a destroy a unit and then lock it in the graveyard. But it was really just like a card. It was a gold card that removed a unit from the board, and that was worthy of a gold slot. And now, Assassination has changed now. Now it does 8 damage to 2 different targets and locks whatever it kills, and it's a different card now. But Artifact Compression is actually, in my opinion, better than Assassination was when it was a gold card. Because Artifact Compression basically is like saying, lock or banish this unit. Just banish the unit. It's gone. It's not going to go to the graveyard. You're not going to ever get it back again. Unlike in The Witcher, where characters come out of the artifact compression, nothing's coming out of this artifact compression. It's gone forever, and what you're left with is such a meager amount of points that usually when you play artifact compression, the swing is high enough to justify it, and your opponent can try to do whatever it can do with that little bit of points, but it's really strong. And I think that the fact that it actually removes the card that it hits from the game is one of the most powerful aspects. Like if it just killed it and replaced it with 2, it wouldn't be as strong. It wouldn't be looked at as critically as it is right now. And I think that it's cool that this card exists. I feel like at first it seemed like it was going to be maybe too strong. I don't know if it is. I don't know if we're there. I think that it's just good enough. And I think that I feel like you have to be greedy to run Scorch instead of this card. quite possibly. Like, you can line up some scorches. You can make it happen if you have pings and, ways to deal damage here and there, and also low strength units yourself. It seems like a lot of work to make Scorch crazy when you can just take this card and eliminate a huge threat. I think Artifact Compression is a very strong card, and I think it's a candidate for any type of deck that wants to have a modicum of control and graveyard hate built into like a single card.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I want to kind of take into the Gwent lab and see if we can't make it really work, especially with an Ethna deck. We talked about Spell Scoia'tael earlier on in the podcast, saying we're not sure how strong it is, but we know Ethna can reuse this card, and I don't know if there's always 2 threats that we want to take out with an Artifact Compression, but if there is, then oof, that's some pretty high upside, especially if they end up making a change to Marigolds.
Yeah, I think Spell Scoia'tael is underrepresented right now, and it's probably still fine. I think that Spell Scoia'tael will always have a very threatening variation out there, and I like Scoia'tael. Scoia'tael's actually it's my middle faction, right? Like, when you look at my most played factions for wins and stuff, I go Northern Realms, Monsters, Scoia'tael, and then Skellige and Nilfgaard are like way below. But like, those are my top 3. Like, I've done at least 150 for all of those. Northern Realms is like pretty high, but like Scoia'tael, I've won a fair amount of Scoia'tael games in my day. And Ethna is still one of my favorite leaders, even though people are all about Fran and Brewer right now. I think it's actually really cool that they made those leaders appealing while keeping Ethna the same, because Ethna in the last patch seemed like, how could you ever make a leader as good as Ethna? Like, how could you do it? But they gave Fran the effect of tutoring any card you want on your deck. That's pretty good.
We talked about that last week, and it was like, we can't believe that this card came into the game like this on this patch.
But it's not so crazy. Like, it's just the evolution of the game. Like, Fran isn't broken. Fran's just really good. Ethna's really good too, and Brewer is showing up as well. There's some dwarf decks out there. So anyway, we'll talk about Scoia'tael.
Brewer is your leader for movement too.
Yeah. Movement's really strong. I've only ever played against it a couple of times, but both times I thought I had the best long round. Movement Scoia'tael has a really good long round.
Oh yeah, they do. It's great. Yeah. If you want to, after this, we'll have to play a couple, because I've really been enjoying movement recently. So
yeah, I think we can do that.
All right, man.
But we talked about those neutral cards, and it was a quick chat. There's only 5 cards to talk about. There's a lot of different ways you can slot those into whatever deck you like. But, and we're going to talk about factions in the future and some deeper discussions about the meta as we get into those discussions in future episodes. But hope you enjoyed this little review of the neutral cards. And we'll wrap it up now. We have an email we'd like to get to. So join us for that after this. Once again, we are supported by our Commandos.
Commandos!
Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks for supporting our content, keeping the podcast ad-free, and keeping us coming back week after week to proudly represent the community with the best content we can.
And another one of the best ways to help the show is just to take a moment and tell someone about it. Whether it's on, social media or otherwise, it makes a huge difference. This is a listener-supported and ad-free podcast because of your support. Thanks to everybody who's joined us already.
Speaking of people who have joined us and supported the podcast, we have a great email here from Chris B. We'd like to talk about the coin flip. So Chris B writes, I know the coin flip topic has come up quite a lot lately, even though the coin flip issue definitely does favor going second, just based on how close the games are, and I think he's talking about Gwent Open here, based on how close the games are ending suggests that it isn't as huge as it sometimes seems, which is why I don't think any drastic change to how the game plays for going first or second should happen. But he does share an idea. He shares, perhaps if you go first, your leader gets extra stats to your leader's power, and that's it. Simple, easy to follow. You can decide which round you want to get those extra points in. It might be too simple of an idea to sort out a complex problem, but I think it would go a long way to evening things out a bit. Thanks for writing, Chris. So, Greyboxer, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that you're onto something, Chris B. I think that getting extra stats might be the ticket. It might be the cure here, because I do a lot of keeping up with Life Coach, and there's been several streams, and in fact a recent one where he shared his thoughts on what he thinks the coin flip is worth, and he says that winning the coin flip is worth approximately 5 points. And I think that you've presented a sort of a cool way to apply those points without making it exceedingly complicated. This is something CD Projekt Red talks about, saying, hey, we want to implement this change, but it has to be clearly communicated to players. And that's something that's hard to do with the coin flip getting fixed by giving someone power. But yeah, let's not forget that this is super important, right? Like, card advantage and going second is so important in a meta where if you can somehow pass and gain card advantage in round 1 after, getting your opponent to pass and giving you the round, you can dry pass in round 2 and get 1.5 card advantage for round 3. Because if you win round 1 on even cards because you went second, and then you dry pass round 2, they have to go down a card just to take the round. And then they go into round 3 and you get double final say, essentially. But I don't know if CD Projekt Red's tested this theory, man, but I think maybe they should. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, I think that my issue with the suggested change of it actually adding points to the leader is that it would favor some leaders over others. Like, there are some leaders like Full Test where you're fine playing it very early, and then there's some leaders like Radovid where you're waiting for a specific time to play him. And if the points were added to the leader specifically, it would dictate when you play it or when you need to play it for that extra swing that is, what is supposed to be there to help you if you are going first. So while I do agree that some sort of compensation should be given to the player that goes first, I think that putting it on the leader is not the best way to look at it, but it's definitely probably part of the exploration that's going on. I also think that I do agree with the concept that the games are close and you can make a lot of decisions during a game, specifically playing spies, although we do see Summoning Circle very popular right now, so we see spies flying back and forth. We see Summoning Circle as basically an addition to combat spies. And, it comes down to whoever can get that last card does really have a very high chance to win the game, because that last card is an unanswerable card. And it's really hard to always give a solution that is going to be the solution that you need in every possible matchup. It is a very complex issue. Different matchups have different needs, really. And, some matchups you'll go down a card. It's fine. And, there's a lot to think about and there's a lot to explore. And I think that CD Projekt Red is definitely doing that. And we'll have to find out what they come up with and when it's addressed, how it's addressed. But I know that they've talked about it at least, and we know that they're working on something. So thanks so much, Chris, for sending the email. You can also be a part of the show. Send an email over to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter, tweet at us questions, anything you'd like us to talk about, maybe anybody you'd like to see on the show. Let us know what you think. Follow us on Twitter @CommandersHorn. Greyboxer, what have you been up to?
Well, as I said earlier in the episode, I did return to streaming, so you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Greyboxer. I'm streaming Gwent sort of late nights. If you're in the North America, South America regions, if you are in the European Union or Great Britain, I guess, you could probably find me very late at night at about 3 a.m. your time. I'll be starting, so I'm the Midnight Viking for a reason. You can find me on Greyboxer on Twitch, and Greyboxer Gwent on Twitter, and you can find me on Discord too.
Yeah, you always tweet when you're going live, so definitely follow him. Greyboxer, it's good to have you back streaming again. I hope you're enjoying yourself, and I hope everybody's enjoying watching you as well. I am continuously streaming with most of my free afternoons, streaming at twitch.tv/McBearded. I usually start around 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central European Summertime. And like I said, we're doing the debearding event this week for September. So we're trying to get some subs in. We're trying to get some fun going on with some Wednesday duels, and ultimately I'm going to end up with a very freaky facial hair permutation, and then ultimately debearded for all to be aghast by, as my name won't make any sense to anybody for at least a week. So Hope you can stop by the stream at some point this week and see where we're at on that journey. And if you want to find out when I'm live, you can always follow me at McBeardCH on Twitter. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. It was a great podcast.
Yeah, and guys, until next time, this is Greyboxer.
And this is McBeard.
Best of luck
on the path.